Imagine vanishing without a trace, not from a dark alley or a remote forest, but from a cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. That's exactly what happened to 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley. One moment she was socializing with friends, and the next she was gone, leaving behind only her sandals and a sea of unanswered questions. This is the baffling case of Amy Lynn Bradley, a mystery that has haunted investigators and her family for over 2 decades. Welcome back to Macabre Mondays, where mystery meets the macabre. I'm Ale.
And I'm Tom.
This week, we're setting sail on a new adventure. Literally. Today's episode is part of Macabre Mondays' special series that we like to call Cruise Cabin 13. A themed set of episodes will bring you every time we're out at sea. Anytime we set sail, we'll dive into mysteries, crimes, or spooky tales tied to the world of cruising. And yes, we're recording this one straight from Cruise Cabin 13 itself.
Because why not scare us while we're traveling, you know?
Yeah, why not? I mean, just add to the cruising
The ambiance.
experience. Yes.
Very demure, very mindful.
Yes, and it's funny because I have to say, I myself don't, I like to cruise. We love to cruise, actually.
You like cruising, but if you actually think about the idea of what cruising is, that's when you...
Yes, that's in a nutshell, yeah, that's how I feel. I mean, we love the fact that we can travel so many different countries or different places and still have everything
You also
in
get
our
seasick.
room. Yeah, so I get super
Basically
seasick.
everything besides...
Yeah, I'm
everything
afraid
about
of the
cruising.
ocean. I'm afraid of the ocean. The deep, dark sea, not my thing. But everything else about cruising, I love.
Hold on. So let's just...
That's on you.
So hold on.
Make sure your mic is in the right spot.
I'm talking here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just get everything in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things you like about cruising are that you don't have to repack your clothes.
Yeah.
And that you get to see new destinations.
Yeah, right.
And the food.
Oh, right. You don't have to cook or worry about cleaning.
So basically everything you get if you go to like an all-inclusive.
Pretty much, except...
Besides going to new destinations.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that's the best part about cruising. And I mean, even though I get seasick and I have to have like 15 motion sickness patches on me at all times, I take a couple naps. Well, I take a nap a day. I make sure if I'm not
Sometimes
feeling good, I
twice.
lay down. Yeah, sometimes twice. There's nothing wrong with that. But honestly, even if it does terrify me, as much as it does, it's really kind of the perfect setting for a good mystery, right?
Bum, bum, bum.
We came up with this idea to kind of cover some cruise cases, or honestly anything that falls under the realm of sea, ocean, cruising, on theme. Right. Well, sit back, relax, especially if you get seasick like me, and join us as we uncover the chilling and mysterious stories from the open waters. Today, we're diving into the chilling, unsolved mystery of Amy Lynn Bradley.
I already know what you're getting ready to ask. No, I have no idea who these people are.
No? Never heard of Amy Lynn Bradley? Okay, I know I've talked to you about her.
Yes.
I mean, sometime within the 3 years that we've been together.
Yes.
I never went on a deep dive.
No.
Pun intended.
I just remember that I had mentioned some type of thing about people going missing, and I remember you mentioned, I didn't know that was her name, but...
Yeah, we were going to watch a documentary, but then you fell asleep, but it's okay.
To be fair, there's two things I'm not great at. Watching documentaries as we're going to bed.
Watching anything as we're going to bed.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
And two, my listening skills could use a little bit of work.
Yeah. So if anybody's got any tips or tricks out there, do send them in at Macabre Mondays podcast at Gmail or anywhere you can find Macabre Mondays. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
To jump in to today's story?
I really don't. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So today's story, not into the water.
Okay, no, please. Stay on board. All right. Amy Lynn Bradley was born on May 12th, 1974. She was a vibrant and accomplished young woman, a 23-year-old graduate of Longwood College in Farmville, Virginia, where she had been a star athlete on the all-women's basketball team, earning a full athletic scholarship. This accomplishment was so significant to her that she even had a unique tattoo that she designed to commemorate it. It was a Tasmanian devil dribbling a basketball, and it even had a graduation cap on it. Super cute.
That actually sounds really dope.
It was a testament to her dedication and talent. Beyond basketball, Amy was a lifeguard and former swim team coach, demonstrating her strong swimming skills and commitment to helping others. She also had a passion for physical fitness, maintaining an active and very healthy lifestyle. Described by those who knew her as outgoing, athletic, and responsible, Amy was the kind of person who lit up a room. She lived in Chesterfield, Virginia, and worked for a computer technology company. So she's going to graduate college.
She's doing the typical thing.
She's doing the thing. So the Bradley family, Ron and Iva, along with their children, Amy and Brad, embarked on this Caribbean cruise in January of 1998.
Oh, so the same type of cruise we're on right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yay.
You're gonna notice a lot of similarities.
I love this.
The trip itself was a stroke of luck. Ron had actually won the cruise through a work incentive program, a prize from his boss. At the start, Amy wasn't really too thrilled about spending a whole week in the open ocean, as it might scare some people when you think too much about it, like me. So this small information of the story I just want to mention because it may sound insignificant, but the fact that she was already starting to feel some type of way about not going on the cruise just kind of plays into another thought you'll see later, that maybe she could have been having a premonition or a gut instinct, one or the other. But Amy was very close with her family and they had a close bond, and she didn't want to miss out on the trip with them. It was really meant to be a celebratory occasion, a chance for the family to enjoy a free vacation and create lasting memories. It was also intended as a post-holiday getaway, a chance to relax and reconnect after the busy holiday season. They were also looking for a warm escape from the Virginia winter. Cruises were, and still are, a popular choice for families seeking an all-inclusive vacation experience, and the Caribbean offered beautiful scenery and exciting ports of call.
The water is really nice.
Oh, it's absolutely
gorgeous.
Yes.
Jinx.
You owe me a foot rub. It was meant to be a time for fun, relaxation, and family bonding. A chance to create happy memories, right? As they all the vacations are. So, let me paint you the itinerary here. They set sail on January 24th of 1998 from San Juan, Puerto Rico. The cruise...
Okay, hold on, sorry.
What?
Just throw in, yeah, I'm Hispanic. I can say these Spanish.
What do you want me to say it? San Juan, Puerto Rico? Come on, get with it, okay? Anyways, the cruise itinerary included stops at these several Caribbean islands. So, starting from January 24th, they embark in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Is that better? Then they'll be out at sea. They're going to actually hit up Aruba,
Ooh.
Curacao,
Ooh.
St. Martin,
Okay.
and then return back to San Juan.
We still got
San
to go
Juan.
to St. Martin, but we know the other two islands.
Right, we actually went for our honeymoon.
Yes, very nice.
So, the first few days were great. The Bradleys enjoyed the ship's amenities, explored their first night, which was Aruba, and were already looking forward to their next stop in Curacao. So one night, a few days after they set sail, the Bradleys went to a formal dinner. It was an elegant affair with everyone dressed to the nines, looking their absolute best. Oops.
Absolute Beth.
It's looking their absolute best. Amy looked stylish and stunning, just like the rest of the Bradleys. The family enjoyed a delicious meal, but the overall atmosphere felt strange. The ship's staff seemed to have been overly attentive and friendly, but particularly just to Amy. There's a show that's called Cruise Ship Killers, where Iva, Amy's mom, talks about that night, and she mentions that the crew would essentially break their necks to help Amy with whatever she needed. Anything that she asked for, they would be like...
And she didn't have any like disabilities or anything?
Nothing. No, she was very outgoing.
So just normal?
Yeah, very outgoing.
Well, she was
very
a basketball
active.
player. Of course, she's fine.
Swim team coach and everything. So they noticed that one particular crew member, the ship's band's resident bass player...
Bass player.
Oops. So the ship's band's resident bass player was particularly focused on her. Other guests around the table also noticed and commented on the attention that the crew was giving Amy. And at some point, the ship's photographer approached the Bradley family and offered to take their picture. Now, on cruises, this is completely normal for anybody who doesn't know.
Very normal.
Very normal. So Amy and Brad happily posed for a portrait photo that would later become a haunting reminder of a happier time. Little did they know, this photograph would become a crucial piece of evidence in the investigation. A final cherished image. For those who may not know, when you are on a cruise, they're kind of constantly asking you to take photos.
Literally everywhere.
Which is
you
great
go.
because at the end, they'll end up uploading them to a photo gallery where you can go at a later time, check them out and purchase them, right? So it's up to you. You can say, no, I don't want, yes, sure. But they can take left and right. They're going to be asking you for photos if you want to take photos with them or not. Or, not with them per se, but of yourself with your family. Or
Imagine. They're like, you want to take a selfie?
You're like, okay, sure. So their main waiter at the dinner table approached Ron and Iva asking, where's Amy? We want to take her to Carlos and Charlie's. So this struck them as odd, seeing as how overly attentive they were being with Amy when she was at the dinner table. And it's understandable to find this odd because, the fact that they're asking to take her off the ship is super strange.
That's really weird. And it's only her, not the whole family?
Yeah, just her. They find her attractive. They probably find her pretty, get it, right? And she's looking stunning.
Okay.
Right. So while the staff and the crew are always going to be extra friendly with guests on the ship, I did look up some protocols. And so in this instance, standard cruise protocols state that crew members cannot formally invite guests to private activities or events, whether on or off the ship.
Okay, red flag.
Exactly. And it's true because if you think about it right now on our cruise, our waiter, John, he's super fun, super friendly. He's really great. But how weird would it be if John's like, hey, can I take Alejandra out to Carlos and Charlie's?
Well, one, as a guy, I'd get a little protective and defensive and be like, yo, that's my wife.
No, right,
But then
right.
two, even if you were like a sibling, like say that they asked my sister.
It's weird, yeah.
And only her, I'd be like, oh, that's nice. Somebody's sitting on her. And then the other side of me would be like, what do you want with my sister?
Yeah, but we're not getting off the ship.
Exactly.
Okay. So when Amy and Brad came back from doing their portraits, their mom and dad told them how the crew members wanted to take them out. Their mom and dad asked them not to leave the ship. Iva understood that, they're adults, but, seeing as they're in a foreign country and it's late, it's just wiser to be cautious, right? And we also have to think about it. This is 1998, a different time.
Yeah.
Different time. So thankfully, Amy showed no signs of even remotely being interested in going. So crisis averted, thankfully. So later that night, the family went to the ship's nightclub where they were having a calypso night. Now, a calypso night on a cruise typically refers to a themed evening with a tropical island vibe. So often they feature live music, island-inspired food and drinks, dancing. It's very casual, very festive atmosphere. Essentially, it's just a party night with the Caribbean flair on a cruise ship.
Okay.
Around 1 a.m., Ron and Iva decided to head to bed, leaving Amy and Brad behind to hang out together at the club. And it was during that night, leading into their arrival into Curacao on the morning of January 26th, that everything changed. So this is where the timeline becomes really crucial. So according to Ron and Iva, they last saw Amy around 1 a.m. In the morning of the nightclub when they were hanging out for the Calypso night, when they headed to bed.
Okay.
She had been socializing in the ship's disco, enjoying the music of the ship's band, the Blue Orchid. It's reported that she was seen talking and dancing with members of the band and other passengers. Brad headed back to their room around 4 a.m. and Amy joined not too long after, around 4:15.
Okay.
So she joined Brad on the balcony. Right now we're in our cabin. We're in cabin 13. So she joins Brad on the balcony and they hang out there for a bit, just talking. She's like smoking a cigarette, whatever. Brad eventually goes to bed, leaving Amy smoking on the balcony. And later, her father, Ron, woke up and saw her sleeping on a lounge chair in their cabin balcony around 5:15.
Okay.
Okay.
Weird, but
well,
I can understand how nice it is. Yeah.
I mean, me and you, we like to nap outside by the pool,
Yeah, I think the balcony just...
I mean, I wouldn't be my choice.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be my choice. But again, you just
Some
got back.
people are more comfortable.
Yeah, and you just got back from a nightclub.
Because in the club, we all fam.
Yes. So he checked on her briefly, and she appeared to be asleep. Now, this is the last confirmed sighting of Amy Lynn Bradley.
Hold on, is he still in the room though?
Are you talking about Ron?
Yeah, Ron.
Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah, he saw her,
Yeah.
and he goes back to bed.
Okay.
Okay, so he sees her and he goes back to bed.
Okay.
Now we need to focus on those crucial moments between 5:15 and what happens next. So after Ron checks on his daughter, Amy, at 5:15, he returns back to his cabin to sleep. And he assumed naturally that Amy was simply resting on the balcony, whatever. It's important to also understand the layout here. The balcony was directly accessible from their cabin. So it wasn't kind of in a separate distant area. So essentially, if he went to sleep, just kind of like how ours is,
Yeah.
if we went to sleep and we woke up, we would be able to see the balcony.
Able to see, yeah. Which is how I feel like this is our third cruise.
Yeah.
And I feel like almost every cruise we've been on that
Similar.
has a balcony.
Yeah.
You typically have one entrance to get down to the balcony.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So and their cruise cabin was a lot bigger. Obviously, ours. I mean, we have a mini suite, but whatnot. So at approximately around 6 a.m. Okay, so keep in mind he saw her at 5:15. 6 a.m. 45 minutes later, Ron wakes up again, and his first instinct, as any parent would, was to check on Amy again. So he states that when he went to the balcony, he noticed that the ship wasn't moving, and she was gone. And this is essentially when like the horror struck to him. They're arriving in Curacao that morning.
Yeah.
So they could just be, one thing I've noticed when we're kind of getting closer to port, we're going super slow. You start going super slow, right? I'm sure they're also trying to kill some time. You know, they're like, we'll get there, right? We've got a certain arrival time. I also think of a boat
like a train, and it probably takes a lot more.
That's a good point. There's probably a lot more logistics there than what I'm thinking. I'm over here. They're like, we're just gonna.
Let's just waste 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's just waste a couple minutes here. Okay. So this is when the horror struck, right? She wasn't even in her bed or in their bathroom. The only things missing were her cigarettes and lighter.
Okay.
But her sandals were neatly placed outside the sliding glass door leading from the cabin to the balcony. But still no Amy.
But her cigarettes and lighter were missing. But we also knew she probably had a cigarette when she first went out there.
When she was out there, right? And
sense.
we know that she was smoking with Brad.
Yeah.
Well, she was smoking her cigarettes. So that's the only thing that's missing. But her sandals are neatly placed outside of the sliding glass door. Okay. That's odd, right? And you know what? Since we've been here, because I knew we were covering this case, there's a lot of things. I'm going to go more in detail.
Oh, man.
But there's a lot of things that I was doing that I'm like, shit. I could totally see. Okay, I was doing the same thing. I had my sandals outside of the balcony.
Yeah.
And they were I had them neatly placed outside because I was coming in and out. So when I went out there, I didn't want to walk barefooted. I wanted to put my sandals on.
Okay.
So it's just little things, right? So Ron, thinking perhaps she went up to the upper deck to smoke, he began searching for her all over the ship for an hour, but found nothing. He then woke up Iva and Brad around 7 a.m. freaking out. Instead of immediately raising the alarms to the captain, right?
Yeah.
To the cruise ship and the security, the Bradleys initially conducted their own frantic search. And so they checked the entire cabin thoroughly, including the bathroom, the closets, she would simply just be somewhere that they hadn't noticed. They then began searching the immediate vicinity of their cabin, checking nearby hallways and public areas on the decks. They likely called out her name, most likely, I'm assuming.
Probably, yeah.
Their voices started to fill with growing panic. So this initial search, conducted by the family themselves, likely took up some time.
Yeah.
Though it's completely understandable given their shock and disbelief, maybe they find her somewhere.
The last thing you want to do is like look the whole
go
ship
crazy.
And then all of a sudden she's just like in the bathroom.
Right, she's in the bathroom, or she might be playing pong or mini golf at the deck 18 or something.
Yeah.
So they were desperately hoping to find her themselves to avoid, the terrible realization that something awful may have happened. Now, after their own search, there was still no sign of Amy. The Bradleys, now consumed by fear and desperation, finally alerted the ship staff. So it was sometime around the 7 o'clock mark. So after 7, right?
So now we're looking at probably over an hour and like 45.
So that's when they started to, that's when they reported her missing. So this is when the official search began, involving the ship's crew and security personnel. Now, a full-scale search for the ship was initiated, or at least that's what the Bradleys were told. Every cabin, every public area, they were told every nook and cranny was supposedly scoured, but there was still no sign of Amy. The ship's crew and security were baffled. How could someone simply just disappear from a cruise ship in the middle of the night? Now, here's a crucial point. When the Bradleys first noticed Amy was missing around 6 a.m., it was still at sea en route to Curacao. They docked in Curacao at 8 a.m. So just a couple hours. Those are 2 hours after Amy was discovered missing. So there's 2 hours there. Now, before we continue, it's important to address the initial assumption that Amy may have fell overboard. There wasn't much evidence to support this theory, though. 1, no witnesses. 2, no signs of struggle near the railing, even though I'm not entirely sure how that would look, really. And there's no type of body or recovery of that sort, right? In fact, there were several key pieces of evidence that strongly suggested that she didn't just fall overboard. The most obvious thing was her sandals. Like I said, they were found neatly placed outside the sliding glass door.
Okay.
It's highly unlikely that someone who had accidentally fallen overboard would have taken the time, to remove their sandals and place them neatly outside. It suggests a level of intentionality, as if she were to have stepped out onto the balcony briefly and expected to come back into the cabin. Right. So another key factor was the lack of any disturbance on the balcony itself. There was no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, or nothing to really indicate that she had been pulled or pushed overboard. And finally, which this part just kind of throws me off, but Amy was known obviously to be a strong swimmer, and she was a lifeguard after all. The idea that she could have accidentally fallen into the water, drowned without a trace, right? Especially in relatively calm seas, right? Calm waters. Seemed highly improbable, which I don't know. This is also a part that I'll talk more to it later, but them just not even suggesting she was a strong swimmer. I get it, but falling overboard, that's still, you're falling overboard. You could have gotten hit. You could have taken the wind out of you, unconsciousness. You could have, it's tall.
I was just going to say, it's also, you're talking, I'm just going to guesstimate, at least 10 feet per floor. Right. So you're talking minimum if she was on,
and she's on
from what we're experiencing, typically 5th floor is your first balcony floor. So you're talking that's a minimum 50 to 70 feet.
Right.
That water hurts when you hit, and it does not feel soft.
Right. Keep that thought there.
Okay, keeping.
So combined with the lack of evidence suggesting that she'd fallen overboard, it led her family to consider the possibility that she might somehow be ashore. Once in port, the Bradleys desperately pleaded with the ship's captain to prevent anyone from disembarking until they made sure that she wasn't on the ship, making sure that they did conduct a thorough search because they believed that she had to have been somewhere on the ship. However, the cruise captain, while claiming to have searched the entire ship, seemed a lot more concerned with maintaining their schedule and not alarming any of the other passengers.
Which I...
Thoughts?
Being
concerns?
on so many cruises, I feel like part of me understands not wanting to alarm everyone.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, this cruise that we're on right now, there's 3,900 guests.
Yes.
So...
that's a lot of people to try to keep calm.
Right.
Additionally, for those of you that don't know, typically most cruises, they have Facebook groups. One of the things I noticed was how fast, because there were people on a cruise prior to this one, they all reacted and made a post about some guy that had fallen and asking if anyone had updates on him and whatnot.
What?
And you didn't see that? I'll have to show you after we wrap up. Come to find out, this is how insane everyone gets when one person just fell.
No, I believe that.
He fell.
He fell where?
I think he just had a slip and fall injury.
Oh, okay. I thought you said he fell off the ship.
I will say, it sounds, based off of everything that I read on the comments, it sounds like he might have had a heart attack or something because he ended up getting emergency airlifted.
Oh, that's rough.
But the fact that everyone knew that and everyone was so locked in on trying to figure out what happened to him, is he okay? What's an update?
Right. So imagine
that to me.
But you gotta
tells
think about
me
it.
I understand where the captain's head is.
Right.
At the same time, you could have come up with multiple other excuses as to why to keep everyone on board for a few.
Right. Again,
customs is taking too long.
There's a lot of things. Right. And I think on both aspects, it's just the way you're seeing it. I totally get that. And then the way I see them too, I'm like, damn, I totally get that too. Yeah. It's rough. So the Bradley family figured that they would disembark immediately and begin searching the island. However, they were initially prevented from doing so by the ship's captain and security personnel. The official reason given was that they needed to conduct their own internal investigation first. So this delay caused immense frustration and anguish for the Bradleys, who felt that precious time was being wasted. They argued that every minute counted and that a land search should be immediately done, right?
Agree.
Okay. So they thought, seeing as they weren't that far from shore when they noticed her missing, that maybe she could have swum or somehow ended up on the island, right?
Makes sense.
So these are thoughts that they're having. Before the rest of the crew was alerted about Amy's disappearance, the band member that was seen with Amy the night before approached Brad saying, "Sorry to hear about your sister," raising the question of how would the band member know about Amy if it wasn't shared yet with the whole cruise ship. Only the captain and head of security know about Amy's missing at this point.
That's weird.
A red flag, right?
That's weird.
Now, since there's still no sign of Amy, the Bradleys begged the captain to put up a picture of her, make an announcement, something, right? But they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to disturb any of the other guests. Eventually, he let an image of Amy start circulating and kind of, hey, have you guys seen this girl, this woman, or whatnot?
I would have been standing at the gate asking every single person.
Well, and that's the thing, because they're trying. I can only imagine how Ron, Iva, and Brad are, because they're like, I know her. She's not just gonna let
this
them
isn't
leave.
normal,
right? And that's the thing that sucks, is because it seemed like the captain and the security personnel that day on that cruise thought that maybe she was shacked up with somebody at another, and I'm like, okay, I get it, I get it, but also you think this family's concerned for no reason.
Well, it also makes sense because, real quick side note, our honeymoon, for example, if you don't mind sharing, on Friday, on one of our last days, you had an incident where you went down.
Oh, where I passed out,
and
yes.
Everyone's all the crew's first thing, well, how much has she had to drink?
Yeah, like,
and I'm like,
right now?
she didn't drink anything. And then they just kept on.
Yeah, and then were they like, did you get the drink package?
And we were like, no. And then they just kept on.
Yes.
So I think
that I was drunk when I wasn't.
I was going to say, I think that also is just one of the other factors that I feel like for this family, it didn't play well into it, because I feel like they see so many types of people.
Right.
So they're like, well, this is typically what happens. Right. We know what typically happens. This is where this usually goes. Right. But I think sometimes the oversight of, hey, if somebody knows somebody and it's their family member,
yes.
If
and
they're showing concern,
yes,
then show the concern back.
Exactly. No, I totally agree with you on that. And it's true, because I remember when I did faint that time, it was either I was drunk or, are you pregnant? And I'm like, no. It's like, girl, it's just heat exhaustion.
I mean, to be fair, it was our honeymoon, so the pregnancy thing.
I was like, we just got married. Don't be saying that. So yes, completely agree with everything you're saying, because I had the same thoughts. I feel like to an extent, there needs to be some empathy there. Yes. And you need to really understand that this family's not just going crazy, and they're not. Listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Listen to what they're saying. Show some compassion. Be a human. What if it were you in those shoes? Do everything that you can. I get it from both sides.
Take a little bit of a grain of salt with
grain
it.
of salt. Wow.
Put a little grain of salt with what they're saying, because obviously no matter what, they're going to be freaked out. Yeah. But at the same time, take a little bit of seriousness.
I know. But that's the thing. I'm sure they were taking it serious, but again,
to
an extent. Yeah. I get both sides.
Yeah.
So after considerable pressure from the Bradley family, local authorities in Curacao were finally contacted, and the FBI was also notified due to the international nature of the case and Amy being a U.S. citizen.
Mm-hmm.
The Bradleys felt that a more proactive and collaborative approach from the cruise line could have made a significant difference in the early stages of the search.
Agreed.
So before alerting the local police department, the family pleaded with the ship's staff to do more. They asked them to delay the ship's departure, to allow them to search the island, and to provide more information about the ship's security protocols. But their pleas were ignored. So the captain pretty much gives them some options, seeing as they didn't find her on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
They could get off the ship, search for her, but the ship is still leaving Curacao as scheduled. Or if they stay on the ship and she is found on the island, they can't get them off the ship. You're just gonna have to meet up with her later.
So basically they're like, oh, sorry, you're SOL.
Yeah, either way, we're still on schedule. We're on schedule.
This feels like the Polar Express.
Oh God,
the conductor.
Yes.
Sorry.
We're
gotta stay on time.
Yes. Santa. Yes. So the Bradleys make the tough decision to get off the ship and start looking for her, sharing photos of her to anyone who would listen and help on the island. Now, the U.S. Embassy was closed that day, and the FBI wouldn't be able to reach them for another day. So that
makes sense.
Yeah, they made the difficult choice to not board back on the cruise and stay in Curacao to continue to look for her. Now, what do they do,
I feel like I would have split up. I mean, I know there's only 3 people left in the family.
Right.
That kind of sounded a little morbid, but
yeah, I was going to say it's a little bit rough.
Me personally, I would try to
like
figure
someone
out,
stays
like,
on the but I guess,
yes.
but then I also understand too, you need, if they did believe that she could have been on land, it just sucks because she could have been on land and more manpower essentially, right? Yep. And it's sad because Iva talks about how they watched the boat leaving and they could hear the music, and they spotted, like, as the cruise ship was leaving the island, they spotted their cabin room and it was all dark with no one in it. They just continued on their itinerary and they could just hear music. Everybody's having a blast while they're left on the island crying their eyes out.
I'm imagining how when we're sitting on the land and we looked at all the cruise ships.
On the beach or something. Yep.
And you see all the cruise ships, and typically we can find our balcony. It's
we
not
do,
hard.
and we always look for it. We're like, oh look, there's our balcony. So imagine
looking out. I feel like you would look at it and just see almost everyone else is going normal, and nobody even knows that there was an incident in this house.
Right.
In this one room.
It's so sad. No, I totally agree with you on that.
Reality definitely had to have struck really
I
hard.
can't even imagine. And when she talks about it, she gets teary-eyed in the documentary.
I can imagine.
Yeah, there's just, and she remembers everything so vividly. That's why it's just, I can't even picture it. So let's talk about camera footage, okay? Now, this is 1998. Cruise ship surveillance technology was not as advanced as it is today. While there were security cameras on board, they weren't everywhere or even high resolution as modern day systems. According to reports and investigations at the time, there were no security cameras positioned in the areas where Amy was last seen. Neither the disco nor the balcony area of her cabin was under direct surveillance. Now, this lack of visual evidence significantly hampered the investigation, leaving investigators with pretty much no trace.
Yeah.
Once they're in Curacao, the investigation intensified, but it was also plagued by missteps and a lack of clear direction. So local Curacao police assisted by the FBI, and they began to search the island. This involved questioning crew members, passengers, and local residents. However, language barriers and jurisdictional issues between the local authorities and the FBI created some early challenges. The Bradleys themselves were heavily involved in the search efforts, of course. They were distributing flyers with Amy's pictures, plastering them all over the island, and pleading with the public for any information. The Bradleys weren't about to just sit back and wait. They were determined to find Amy no matter what it took. So they went into full-on investigation mode. They hired private investigators, real gumshoes, to dig deeper than the official investigations seemed to be going. They put up reward money, hoping to incentivize anyone with information to come forward. And we're not talking about pocket change here. The FBI eventually offered a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to Amy's recovery, and the Bradleys themselves contributed to that amount and offered their own separate reward as well. So another interesting fact of the ocean is, that there's this idea that once you get far enough out to sea, it's like the Wild Wild West, right? So there's like no laws, no rules, just open water. And while it's not exactly like that, there are definitely a lot of gray areas when it comes to jurisdiction on the high seas. So basically, the ocean is divided into different zones. Closest to the shore, you have a country's territorial waters. So this is usually about 12 nautical miles from the coastline. And within that zone, that country's law still applies.
Okay.
So if you commit a crime within 12 miles of the U.S. coast, you'll be prosecuted under U.S. law. Okay, so that's
makes sense.
Right, makes sense. Which all this stuff I did not know.
This is really cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning. So then you have what's called the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ.
Ooh, sounds kind of fancy.
I know, right? So this extends out to 200 nautical miles from the coast. And this zone, in this zone, a country has special rights when it comes to things like fishing, drilling for oil, and other economic activities. But it is not full sovereignty like in territorial waters.
Makes sense.
Right. But when you hit beyond that 200-mile limit, that's where things get interesting.
Do tell.
That's what's known as the high seas, or as a lot of people know, international waters. And this is where that lawless idea comes in. No single country has complete control over the high seas. It's kind of like a shared space. Now, it's not a complete free-for-all per se. There are international laws and treaties that do apply, like the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. These agreements cover things like piracy, drug trafficking, and environmental protection. But enforcing those laws are tricky because it requires cooperation between different countries. So that's where we start getting into that.
Makes sense.
Right. So in a way, it is a sense of no man's land on the high seas.
Yes.
It's not that there are no laws, but enforcing them can be a challenge. And it's a vast area. It's obviously a difficult place to police. We're talking about open waters. So this can create opportunities for a lot of illegal activities and make investigations like the one in Amy Lynn Bradley's case a lot more complicated. So let's add another odd piece to this puzzle that we've already got going on. Iva Bradley has this signed statement from a security officer saying that they searched the bathrooms, common areas, and even the lockers. But that's not exactly every nook and cranny like they originally claimed, right? That's like pretty much the places they looked.
That's all the common areas.
Right, that's all the common areas that the Bradleys already looked at. So you telling them that you checked every nook and cranny is
There's
not correct.
a lot of secret corridors.
I mean, there's so much. There's so much.
Yes.
Even being on the ship ourselves.
How many times on this cruise alone have we been walking and then all of a sudden a random door opens?
Yeah.
And you and I look at each other. Oh, wonder where that goes to.
Exactly.
We don't explore it though.
Yeah, no, we don't. We don't go to prohibited areas, but it just doesn't add up clearly. Yeah. And so because of this new information, the FBI actually told the Bradleys, you need to fly to St. Thomas and demand to get back on the cruise ship. So now they get back on board. So they fly out to St. Thomas so they can get back on this cruise ship, right? And they demand to get back on board. And it's a full-on confrontation with the captain, the crew. The FBI is now present.
Oh.
Yes. The FBI is not messing around, right? They're like, there's something going on.
Wow.
Yes. And just as this is all unfolding, two college students who Amy and Brad had been hanging out with earlier in the cruise come forward and say that they saw Amy that morning getting on the elevator with the bass. Oh, why do I keep saying bass player?
That fish player?
Yeah, the fish, exactly. But they said that they saw her getting on the elevator with the bass player heading towards the disco. Now remember, this is the same guy who allegedly told Brad, sorry to hear about your sister, before she was even reported missing to the whole cruise ship. Now the FBI did interrogate the bass player. One day I'll get it. I just keep thinking about an actual bass. So the FBI do interrogate this bass player, but he denies everything, of course, including ever making that comment to Brad.
I don't like this guy.
Right, but then it's crappy because it is a classic he said, she said situation. I don't know, I get it totally if that's what, I'm not saying Brad is lying at all, but it's hard to approve.
It's just giving me a lot of sketchy.
I know, and it is true because why would he say that?
Yeah.
Why would you say that? So it makes it just incredibly difficult to prove anything, which is the sad part, right? So here's another really weird detail I'm going to throw in at you.
Okay.
Now, remember that formal dinner where Amy and Brad had their portraits taken?
Yep.
Well, the ship's photographer definitely remembers taking their pictures. But when the Bradleys went to look at them in the gallery, Amy's photos and even Brad's had vanished. They were gone. They disappeared.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Like they were never there. Now, this happened just a few hours after they were uploaded to the gallery. Now, how does that happen? Then there's this video from the night of the disco. There happened to be a videographer just casually recording that night, and it turns out that there's footage of Amy dancing with the bass player. But here's the kicker. That video didn't surface until a whole year later. Mm-hmm.
What? A year later?
Uh-huh. A whole year later. Because apparently, get ready for this one.
I guess my biggest thing, a year after.
I'm going to tell you more, but yeah. Hold on. I know, I understand. Trust me when I tell you I get it.
I'm frustrated.
So apparently, the videographer that just so happened to
Yes.
be there that night, right? Was just he wasn't recording any footage of
Yeah.
Amy per se, but she just so happened
He was
to
just
show
filming
up.
the event.
Yes, and
Yes.
she just so happened to be in there with the bass player. He then gave a copy to the head of security, so then they can send it to the FBI and the Bradleys.
Okay.
But the security went to his cabin and tried to get the videographer's master tapes, but he refused to hand them over. So the Bradleys didn't even know this video existed until a year later. So the security team supposedly never gave it to the FBI. Isn't that strange?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they not hand it over to the FBI and
Sounds
to
like
the
there's
Bradleys?
a lot more going on underneath.
That we know. I mean, who knows, right? So this is the kind of information that would have been obviously incredibly valuable in the initial search. And because imagine that if they had that, they could have, I don't know, who
They
knows,
could have
right?
interrogated him right then and there.
Well, they could have interrogated him. They could have interrogated the people around him. They could have
Yes.
the people around
So
them.
many
They're
people.
just, there could have been a lot more done. So now they give the bass player a polygraph, which interestingly enough, he passes. But that doesn't really tell us much legally. Because as you know, polygraphs, if nobody
you can
knows.
beat a polygraph.
Right. They're also not admissible in court because they're just simply not reliable enough.
Mhm.
They measure physical reactions to stress, not actual deception. So this means that even if someone is completely truthful, they could appear to be lying on the test due to nerves. A practiced liar could easily control their physical responses and pass the test, right? So while the polygraph test result might have been considered during the investigation, it wouldn't uphold in a court of law. They like to use it as a tool.
Which makes sense because the way that I've understood polygraphs is typically it's a way to, the polygraph showed you lied, so now we have proof.
Mm-hmm.
The person doesn't have their lawyer present, so typically during this
Mm-hmm.
happening, so then they also don't understand that, hey,
Right. But now
what they're saying is just admissible. So now if the person was
right.
lying,
It's like a scare tactic. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And
then they get a legit confessional.
then it
That-
leads to that. Right. So
yeah.
that's why they use it as a tool. So the Bradleys head back home.
Okay.
They weren't just working behind the scenes. They took their search public, appearing on national television shows like America's Most Wanted, The Montel Williams Show, and countless news programs. They gave heart-wrenching interviews, sharing Amy's story and begging for any leads. They understood that keeping the case in the public eye was their best chance of finding her. So they knew that someone somewhere had to know something. They kept pushing, kept searching, kept fighting, determined to leave no stone unturned. It was an incredibly difficult and public battle, but they were willing to do anything for Amy. Despite the extensive search efforts, no concrete evidence of Amy's whereabouts was found in Curacao. The initial search focused on the areas around the port, but as days turned into weeks, the search expanded to include other parts of the island. Unfortunately, the terrain in some areas of Curacao is quite rugged and difficult to navigate, which hampered the search efforts. Now, there started to be several alleged sightings of Amy that were reported in the years following her disappearance. So these reports, while providing a glimmer of hope for the Bradley family, were never confirmed either. When Ron and Brad went back to Curacao to continue the search, they met a cab driver who gave them another potential lead. The driver told them that they'd seen a woman who looked like Amy asking for a ride. And what really stood out to the driver was her eyes. They specifically mentioned her bright green eyes, which are a distinctive feature of Amy.
It's also very, I don't know about everyone else. To me, I don't know that many people besides my sister-in-law that have green eyes.
I agree with you on that. So that's a great
Yeah.
lead, right? So that's a great lead that they have, especially since they have nothing.
Yeah.
So another time, there was this Canadian tourist who had been on a beach in Curacao around the time that Amy had disappeared. He said he saw a woman speed walking with some men that were following right behind her. He thought it looked like a domestic dispute, but what stuck with him were the woman's tattoos. They matched the description of Amy's. He hadn't reported it right away because he didn't think anything of it. He had yet to know of her until months later. He happened to see Amy's case on a missing persons show and came forward with the information. Allegedly, he even said the photo of Amy looked exactly like the woman he saw in Curacao.
Oh, my Lord.
I know. You're going to have a lot of those. Now, sometime thereafter, they were contacted by a private investigator named Frank Jones, who claimed to be a former U.S. military special ops. He presented his credentials, and this terrifying theory that Amy had been kidnapped and forced into sexual slavery somewhere in the Caribbean. Given the very real problem of sex trafficking, this was a deeply concerning possibility. The Bradleys, understandably desperate, clung to this lead. To be able to search for her, Jones needed money, a significant amount, $25,000, to start his investigation, and said he was confident that he could rescue Amy. The Bradleys, with the help from friends and family, managed to scrape together the money to pay for him to start the investigation. Dang. So then, he ended up presenting them with some blurry photos and vague, disturbing descriptions showing proof. The photos included photographs of a woman on a beach with what looked to have a similar body build with a tattoo in the same location Amy has. This gave them a glimmer of hope, but it was also incredibly distressing. Imagine that. So after this initial investigation, Jones asked for more money, another $100,000, saying that he was close to finding her and needed the funds for a rescue operation. Ron's boss at the time, who felt somewhat responsible since he pretty much gave them the cruise as a reward, offered to front them the money.
Wow.
I know. But he wisely decided to hire his own private investigator as well, so that Tim could keep an eye on Frank Jones and Curacao, right?
Makes sense.
Okay, so solid. I mean, he's fronting up all this money. He wants to help the Bradley family. He's got
deep pockets. He might as well.
Yeah, and he feels bad. He's like, you know what? If I can, anything I can do to help this family. So now the Bradleys had 2 private investigators working on this case. They were told to stay in Miami by Jones so that they'd be close by if Amy was found once he rescues her. But after a week in Miami, Jones calls them saying his rescue attempt was foiled and he was caught in a gunfire fight with her captors. It's then that Ron's boss's investigator, Tim, ends up calling them and reveals the truth. Jones was a con artist, not a special ops agent like he claimed. He'd use that money to basically have a vacation on the beach. And the photos that I just showed you, they were staged. Hired models with a stenciled ankle tattoo.
My gosh.
So these photos that I'm showing you right now. Staged. He staged them. He hired models to stage this. Mm-hmm.
I'd be suing the hell out of this guy.
It's awful. And you got to think about it. They were being victimized all over again because on top of everything else, now they have to go on through this. So this part of the story is absolutely heartbreaking. You know, when someone you love goes missing, you're desperate for any lead. So imagine that. Any glimmer of hope. And unfortunately, there are just people out there who prey on the desperation of people who are going through their toughest battles. So at this point, it's been 2 years of letdown. Frank Jones, piece of shit.
Yeah.
Taking advantage of a family in distress who's really, I mean, imagine.
Did he get jail time? Because I feel like that deserves jail time.
I didn't find it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I didn't find information on that, but I'll get back to you.
That like pisses me off. Like I'm trying to put myself in the dad's shoes. Yeah. And I don't know. I think that I would struggle really bad. I know he's special forces, but I would struggle really hard to not go after him.
Allegedly, he's a con artist.
So he's probably not even special forces.
He wasn't a special forces ops or whatnot. He was conning his way. So one of the most disturbing sightings of this case is a persistent rumor of Amy being seen in a brothel in Curacao. This rumor, while never officially substantiated, has been a source of immense pain and distress for the Bradley family. Another sighting had placed her in different locations in the Caribbean, even years later. One particularly disturbing account came from a U.S. Navy serviceman who claimed to have seen a woman matching Amy's description had leaned over to him at the brothel and allegedly said, "I am Amy Bradley and I need help." He said that she had the same tattoos as Amy and that she seemed distressed and tried to communicate with him that she couldn't leave and needed help to escape. But she was then motioned away by some men. He unfortunately didn't report this until years later because he didn't want to get in trouble since he was in an unauthorized situation.
And he's not allowed.
He should be at a brothel.
Yeah.
But that's just crazy to me because have you ever heard of an anonymous tip?
Oh, yeah.
Like, come on. I get you're at a brothel.
Yeah. I think the other big thing is he's a Navy man, and in the military, they take that even more serious. He could, even though it's anonymous, even if somehow it came back to him, you're talking Article 15, dishonorable discharge.
Yeah, and he probably didn't want to risk
and the rest of your career screwed.
Well, he didn't report it, So by the time he reported this years later, the FBI went to that brothel to investigate. but the building was no longer there because it was burnt down.
Huh. Of course.
I know. It's just so sad. One of the most significant leads in the case came around 2005. Now, she went missing in 1998. It came around 2005 in the form of an anonymous email. The email contained a link to an adult escort service website operating in the Caribbean. Featured on the site was a woman going by the name of Jazz, and the photo was almost a mirror image of Amy. Iva had said that the investigator
Oh my gosh.
tasked with comparing the photos was completely convinced. He was so sure it was Amy that he said he'd bet his entire career on it. What do you think?
I'm going back to the first photos. Yeah, the eyes and the whole facial structure, everything matches. And her rosy cheeks.
And look at this other photo.
Oh, wow.
The side by side.
Literally.
Looks just like her, right?
It literally, and it, to me, it looks like a woman. It looks like the girl on the right.
It looks like
that's
Amy.
Been tortured and put through hell.
Yeah. No, it's true. And then also you got to think about it. Well, when it comes to these sex rings, they're drugging them.
Yeah.
They're abusing them.
I was going to say, she also looks drugged out.
She does, definitely. And the FBI actually did a age analysis of how she would look at this age, and she looks like that photo of Jazz, the woman at the brothel. Look at that.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Now, the most recent lead came from a woman who was vacationing in Barbados. She was in a bathroom stall when another woman came in looking shaken. Two men then showed up right behind her and started threatening the woman at the sink, telling her not to cause a scene and to be there tonight. Whatever that means. So the first woman concerned checked on the shaken woman and asked if she needed help. The shaken woman mumbled a name saying Amy and that she's from something's Chester, Virginia. But before they could talk further, the conversation got cut short. The shaken woman, who we allegedly think is Amy, left with the men, and the first woman, unable to find security in time, they left the store, and so she went back to her hotel. Later, she comes back home, and she saw something about Amy's case on the news and realized the connection. She reported the incident and even did a composite sketch of Amy and the men in the bathroom. That is a composite sketch. That's
the same photo. That literally looks identical like to Jazz. Yes.
Yeah, to Jazz and everything else.
Oh my gosh.
And look at these. Look at the composite sketch of the men that like her captors. Insane, right?
That's wild.
So sadly, that was the last confirmed sighting of Amy. So the Bradley family has continued their tireless search for Amy for over 2 decades. They have worked with private investigators, appeared on numerous television shows, interviews, the whole nine.
You name it.
Yeah, you name it. This case remains open and under investigation. The FBI continues to investigate any credible leads that surface. If anyone has any information regarding the disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley, please contact the FBI or visit the Find Amy Bradley website at findamylynnbradley.net. The FBI is still offering up to $25,000 reward for any information that would lead to the resolution of Amy's case. And any information, no matter how small it may seem, could be crucial to bringing Amy home and providing closure for her family. One of some of the known tattoos that I just want to mention is that she has a Tasmanian devil on her shoulder, a sun on her lower back, Chinese symbol on her right ankle, and a gecko lizard on her navel. She also has a navel ring as well. This is her missing report.
So sad.
Yeah. So now with all this information, what do you think happened? Some people, from all the investigation I've done and over the years that I've known about the case, some people believe that she probably fell overboard and just died in the ocean.
I don't buy with everything else, I don't buy the fell overboard.
Okay. Why are you thinking that?
Curious. One, I don't know the technology that they had on boats back then.
Not much.
But the tech they have now, and even some of the security, I'm sure I recall my sisters going on cruises in the early 2000s, so not long after this.
Mm-hmm.
The tech they had at the time of that moment was at least enough that they would have at least known if somebody went overboard.
Right.
There's at least some type of safety precautions. It's not nearly as what we have now.
As advanced,
where the minute that you go overboard, almost everything goes off.
But they didn't on this ship. Because I also looked that up. I immediately was thinking, okay, what about cameras? What about, infrared signals, something, right? Exactly what
Yeah,
you're mentioning.
because they have sensors and stuff.
They have
Like
sensors.
if something passes a certain
then
level,
it gets
they're
like, it raises an alarm. Yes. And I will say that is very true, because anytime I've ever heard of a cruise of somebody going overboard, somehow everyone knows.
yes.
Somehow somebody
There's
knows
alerts
something.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I looked that up, and it didn't seem like that was something that was carried on the ship, or was even, also the captain didn't, if they were alerted, they would have said something. Oh yeah, she fell overboard
I
clearly.
don't know, this captain, that
Captain, my captain.
no, that's the other thing. That's the other thing to me. When you look at the rest of everything, the way that the certain crew members, because from what you were saying, it doesn't sound like it was everyone on the ship, but
Right.
there was a select few
Right.
members of the crew that were very nice to her. Again,
Yeah, those
this
things
is
are
the late
kinda-
90s, early 2000s. A lot of crimes like this to me were at that time a lot easier to get away with.
Yes. Very true. Very true.
The security measures pre 9/11 were also not nearly as what we have now.
That's true. Very true.
So that to me is where all of
You
my
don't buy the
thoughts,
overboard story?
No.
Yeah.
All of my thoughts are going to 100% she was sex trafficked. Seeing the photos too of this Jazz person.
I know they look
Jazz or Jax?
jazz.
Jazz.
Yeah. They look so alike.
So similar.
Yeah. And the
so
sightings.
yes.
The
and all the
sightings
different
kill me.
sightings. I just also after being to Curacao
Yeah.
and seeing, for those of you that haven't ever been to Curacao, there's some nice areas and there's also a
some
lot
rough
of very,
areas.
very impoverished
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah.
So I also see,
Well,
and
it's
they also
beautiful.
explained how there's, even in the main town center, it
Mhm.
used to be very wealthy and had a lot of money
Yes.
coming through it. And then you go now, and a lot of those buildings are ran down. A lot of those buildings have been turned into multiple different
Such a beautiful
apartments.
country to have been to how it looks
Yes.
now. Yeah.
So that to me is the other side of it, is also kind of understanding Curacao and knowing that. To me, I think
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful country. I remember when we got there, they had the different colored buildings. It's like that one strip. It was gorgeous.
That's the one that's 16 miles from Venezuela?
No, Aruba is
Aruba.
60 miles from Venezuela.
Even then, still
that's a
not
good-
too far from
that's a good
Venezuela
place.
to
That's a good thing to mention. Back then,
there's other islands.
Yeah, and the whole Caribbean's
Yes.
there. It's just
And
yeah.
Curacao has, because Curacao and Aruba, both of them have that open market
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of the Venezuelans, and they were telling us even when we were there that
Yeah.
that had been going on for years and years and years.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's that other side of it.
There's just so many more channels there.
Yes.
Yeah, and
and channels that are never watched.
that are I was going to mention. Yep, I was just about to say. That's why I think there is definitely some type of abduction.
Yes. Mhm.
Have you ever seen Hostel? It's a scary ass movie, but it's true. No, so that abduction, the foul play on the ship,
Yes.
and the human trafficking, forced prostitution thing, absolutely. That's just so sad. There is another theory that
Ooh.
I just didn't really. I'm not a big believer on it, but the theory suggests that Amy willingly left the ship, perhaps to start a new life. However, yeah, there's very little to support this because Amy had a loving family.
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry. You started this whole conversation. She's had a great career. She's been
I
an
know.
athlete. She had a full ride, right?
Yeah, she had a full ride scholarship and everything. Yeah. And
Why would she just randomly? I mean, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I've been depressed, but at the same time,
Yeah.
oh yeah, let me just start a whole new life.
That's what they were saying, that pretty much that, you start a whole new life. The pressure of having a corporate job and being a responsible adult and life in general is just so that you. And I just don't believe that. That to me didn't even feel like a theory that
not
would
from
at all.
somebody that, because I'm sorry, but corporate life, being somebody that's in corporate life now, corporate life, in my opinion, is 10 times easier than getting a full ride and being a college athlete at that level.
Right. But that's why they're saying, oh, maybe it's the pressure. I just don't believe that.
No.
That to me is just
No.
not a valid theory.
College definitely had to have had way more pressure than
Yeah.
her having to work on transitioning into real
Yeah.
world. My other thought is, how long do people that are typically kidnapped for sex trafficking live?
Well, that's
Because from what I hear and all these other cases that are out there, usually it's only 5 to 10 years at max.
I know. And
if
that's
you're
why,
lucky.
and it was 1998. We're talking about 20 plus years.
And at this point, she'd be...
The last sighting was in 2005.
Because what age was she when she went missing?
23.
So 23. So you're talking a whole nother almost 30 years since then.
Yeah. Close, yeah.
So she's almost 60. There's...
I know.
That unfortunately...
I just wish we had more answers, because that's really the most frustrating part, is that there's no definitive answer, and the lack of concrete evidence just makes it impossible to say for sure what happened to her.
It almost makes you want criminals, for no matter how bad everything was, it almost makes it, for me, I'm trying to put like myself in the shoes of a parent.
Yeah.
To me, I would almost come out and say, look, forget about the money, forget about you guys going to jail. I'm not even going to press charges.
I just want answers. Yeah, I just want to know.
Even if you guys tell me, oh yes, we kidnapped her. For 20 years, we had her sex trafficked, and then we killed her.
Yeah.
I'd be crushed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at least I could finally start getting back to where I could maybe start sleeping a little bit better, knowing this sucks, but at least I know what happened.
Well, and that's at the end of that documentary, Iva talks a lot about that they're still gonna keep trying to look for her. They're still trying to get answers, because they know that she's out there. They know there's more to the story other than she fell overboard or she went.
And there's got to be more than just one person that knows something.
There definitely is, and like you said, I know it's been so long too. I'm sure those are thoughts that cross their minds, and it's just sad. And so the lack of the concrete evidence just kind of makes it impossible to say for sure what happened. And so the Bradley family firmly believes that she was abducted, and the alleged sightings, particularly the one from the Navy serviceman, lend some credence to the human trafficking theory. However, without more solid proof, it remains a mystery. So
that sucks.
Yeah. And that's the disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley and its complex and heartbreaking story.
That is absolutely an awful story.
Thanks for setting sail with us today on Macabre Mondays, Cruise Cabin 13. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into a truly unsettling mystery. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss our next port of call. It's important to acknowledge the incredible work that's gone into keeping Amy's case alive. A huge thank you has to go to the Bradley family themselves, working hard to fight to find Amy and keeping her name alive. All their constant efforts to make sure people are still looking for her. It's an invaluable resource and a testament to their unwavering dedication. In addition to their dedication, we consulted news articles from various sources, including CNN, NBC News, The Washington Post. We also used resources like Wikipedia, the Charlie Project, and NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, to verify details and get a broader understanding of the case. The amazing documentaries covering the story of Amy's disappearance, Unsolved Mysteries episode Mystery at Sea, and Oxygen's Cruise Ship Killers episode Dark Waters. These sources helped us paint a complete picture of this complex and heartbreaking story for today's episode.